The editing in film noir doesn't have to edit as fast as a lot of other genres, and that's good because it gives you time to sit in this mood and to be a little unsettled by all the elements, editing being a big one of them.
Editing in noir is amazing because the stories are so complex sometimes that just keeping track of things can be a challenge. So in addition to the standard editing devices, you know, and you'll see in noir kind of jumpy editing sometimes used as a substitute for violence, because there really isn't a lot of violence shown in these movies. People get the mistaken impression that somehow these are films with a lot of action, a lot of gunplay, and they really aren't. They're psychological dramas. And the editing sometimes plays a large part in that, establishing a violence that they couldn't actually show on the screen at this time.
The characters are so hard-bitten. So I think sometimes filmmakers add a voiceover to try to give the audience an into the character, and a voiceover is always the character in the movie speaking directly to the audience.
My feet hurt, and my mind felt like a plumber's handkerchief. The office bottle hadn't sparked me up, so I'd taken out my little black book and decided to go grouse hunting.
Then there's another more subtle thing about the editing in these films that I don't think gets discussed enough, which is that the films are really very seductive as well. And they kind of draw you in through this flashback structure very often, where it's a more spellbinding way of cutting a film, and it almost gets dreamy.
But I remember looking up and seeing this girl, Jenny.
Noir didn't invent flashbacks, but noir perfected flashbacks as complex and intricate as they could possibly be.
This is noir. Men acting bad, women acting bad, people breaking out of the Hollywood stereotype. And I do think the fun of noir is the bad guy you root for.
Chiquita, what are you doing here?
Get out. You army men might be accustomed to group showers. I like mine alone.
What you really need to make something film noir is the character in the first place. And the film noir character is a gray character. That's what's so much fun about film noir, is that you have flawed characters and sometimes deeply flawed characters, but as long as they have a code and as long as they're true to themselves, they can really get away with a lot of behavior that in a normal film would immediately peg them as the villain.
You make me do it. Why do you make me do it? You know you're going to talk. I'm going to make you talk.
Chandler defined it best. He described the film noir hero as a knight in dirty armor. In my own career, I've tried to redefine him as a knight in blood-caked armor. But he is still a knight. He just doesn't look like one. And he's never rewarded for what he does. He's this lonely character who's out there and he's just bugged by stuff.
If you've seen enough noir, you start to identify all the traditional characters that are represented. There's always the hard luck loser, there's the schemer, there is the femme fatale, there is the upstanding good girl, there is the sleazy nightclub owner, who's always the slickest guy in the story and may or may not be shady. You're not always sure. There's the big capitalist banker businessman type. I call them the noir apostles.
Just politics, baby. Good old dirty politics.
The kind of dialogue that popped through film noir, it had nuance and it had cleverness and a lot of humor.
And I tend to think that the acting is a perfect corollary for the writing style. I mean, the writers weren't really writing very realistic.
I absolutely love the acting in these films because many times there's not a lot of dialogue in these films. There are more sort of brooding characters and that are very angst-ridden. More is said by an actor glancing or lighting a cigarette or walking down a street and contemplating the predicament they're in.
You just sit and stay inside yourself. You wait for me to talk. I like that.
I never found out much listening to myself.
Acting in film noir, something that I notice perhaps is that it's slightly over the top in modern standards, but it's perfectly suitable for that particular style. You actually need it to be over the top. It's a little pushed at you.
You're not talking about a sack of gumdrops that's going to be smashed. You're talking about a dame's life.
How's about one for me? There's a very imaginative and clever use of sexuality in the films. Nothing ever gets too explicit or too outrageous, but the morality of the films is extraordinarily questionable and daring.
I won't let Bernie break your neck.
And if I don't, you'll make me talk. You'll squeeze it out of me with those big, strong arms. Won't you?
The femme fatale was really born as a result of women taking over so many of the roles of men during World War II. And when men came back, and among all of the other dislocations that they experienced, one was all of a sudden women with this whole new role, women working, women being outside the house. In a lot of ways, film noir was sort of male filmmakers' revenge on women for having done that. At the same time, it really represents a lot of mankind's conflicted role with womankind, which is why the femme fatale has her web on the one hand, but is always sort of beautiful and mysterious and sexy and attractive on the other hand.
If I Should Die Before I Live. That's a nice title. By Philip Marlowe.
As a result of the war, women were given, I think, some broader characters to play. They didn't have to be quite as cardboard. And that the opportunities for women have improved for the characters. That you can have women who are as tough and as difficult and as ruinous as some men have been portrayed.
And you're not through. You're in the middle, deep, over your head. No matter what you do now, you're still part of everything that's happened.
But it's misleading to think that noir has this misogynistic view of women. If you look very closely at these films, they're just chock full of upstanding, forthright women who are going to rescue the poor chump who doesn't know, the hell he's getting into. And I just think that that's as revolutionary a thing for these films as their depiction of the evil woman.
But maybe it'll teach you not to overplay a good hand. Now she doesn't like you. She hates men.
I hate their women, too, especially the big league blondes. Beautiful, expensive babes who know what they've got. And inside, blue steel, cold. Cold like that, only not that clean.
But a femme fatale is somebody who comes into the office one day with a problem that must somehow be solved by the hero, even though he's not dead sure what that problem is, and he's pretty sure he's being lied to. But it's fun finding out what the problem is.
What about this day, Mr. Crystal Ball?
A dish.
What kind of a dish?
60-cent special, cheap, flashy, strictly poison under the gravy.
Amazing. And how do you know all this?
Well, she was married to a hoodlum, wasn't she? What kind of a dame would marry a hood?
All kinds.
The femme fatale is where women get to be completely the equal of men. They are equally tempted, equally compromised, and equally guilty. And that's kind of a new thing for Hollywood at this point. I mean, they were very independent women. They knew what they wanted, and they knew how to get it. The guy has to pick up a gun, but the woman doesn't need the gun. She knows exactly what weapons she has to wield.
You ought to have killed me for what I did a moment ago.
There's time.
No, you won't.
I don't think we have femme fatales in movies today. I think it's one of the things that I think is a big loss. Because a femme fatale is a woman who makes men go bad. And that is very interesting. It always fascinates an audience. It's a unique kind of woman.
The star of film noir is Fate. Just doesn't get a screen credit.
Fate isn't just a character in noir, it's the way the plot works.
There's always this idea that in a sense, the audience is somewhat aware of where things are heading, the way the characters aren't necessarily. But there's always a feeling, I think, with the best film noir that things are going to end badly, and I think that fate does hang heavy over the characters.
Psychological frailty is fate, and film noir is nothing but psychological frailty.
The difference between the 30s, early 40s gangster movie, the Jimmy Cagney classic, and the film noir is really generational. If you think about the 30s movies of Edward G. Robinson and Little Caesar, he had no decision. It was not some great moral question that came to mind. He was either going to kill that guy and take over the racket or get killed. Film noir, I know people might not think this, but they're much subtler. There are choices to make. And the key is the choice you make takes you down that road. But it was your decision to get in the car. It's your decision whether or not to go with Barbara Stanwyck and get involved with killing her husband. Your fate is not dictated to you as it is in the 30s and early 40s gangster movie. Your fate is in your hands by your decision. And that's what makes it noir.
All these elements come together to create this vortex of doom that we're drawn into.
Oh, Dr. Craig, you've come to see Miss Shelby Hall.
No. I've come to take her with me.
The tombstone of film noir was, and intentionally so, was touch of evil. It was like the official end, where it taken all these film noir devices right to their extreme. But the real end of it came with television and the 50s family that television came to glorify.
And then at the end of the classic noir era, Law and Order came back in a very heavy-handed way. Not coincidentally coincides with the witch hunt, the communist witch hunt in Hollywood. And they said, look, you can't depict these characters having valid sociological reasons for what they do. They're just crazy. Then Warner Brothers put out White Heat with Jimmy Cagney, and it's just the guy's a psycho.
How you doing, Parker?
Stuffy in here.
I need some air. Oh, stuffy, huh? I'll give it a layer.
Any movement in art comes out of the times in which it's made. So it's interesting, I think, that as it faded off, it was in the 70s that it came back, late 60s and 70s, which I think is sort of because of Vietnam, has got the audience in a mindset where they're into the film noir again.
What's the matter, Corporal?
I'm all right.
Chinatown paid off the promise of all those detective novels, all the detective movies based on those novels.
Film noir is still hard to do, and it's particularly hard to do in color. A great example of it is Memento, which is the Chris Nolan's film that plays backward.
All the films I've made have been strongly influenced by watching these films and other thrillers, and I've tried in my films to follow that same pattern.
I think the best noirs are films that don't try to be. They sort of wake up and find themselves there.
And now there are many films that are paying homage to these incredibly wonderful films. Sin City would be one, Usual Suspects would be another. There are many.
Come on, Bob. Let's finish it the way we started it, on the level.